Hi, everyone. It's your boy Zach. Last night, I think at midnight Eastern time, No Time to Die went on to, what do they call it? First Look? It's just streaming. It's pay per view. I don't know why they don't call it pay per view. Um, I did not find the price bad at all. It was 19.99 for I think the first 24 hours. And I mean, think about it. You go to a matinee and you get like just a soda, and that's $20. So I was very, very happy with that price. Plus, I can watch it twice. I can have a friend watch it. It's freaking fantastic. So, as I always point out, What's Wrong is just an easy title. There's very few perfect movies. RoboCop, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Ghostbusters. So I want to say, first of all, I was really impressed with a lot of my favorite YouTubers who, could admit, yeah, this movie isn't woke, and Nomi is a legitimately good character. She works. So we've all seen the shill media press and the YouTube reaction of, I do not know why they decided to go with woke as their viral marketing campaign. Like, I'm pretty sure the woke head fake probably cost them 25 to 50 million. I saw a couple articles. They're basically saying it's doing solid, but it's underperforming. Box office in the days after, or the years after COVID, you can't really compare it to the before times. As far as I can tell, it's doing good. The word of mouth is good, and I think it's going to do very, very good on this streaming pay-per-view. I mean, you think about it. The studio gets to keep way more than they did with the traditional, release into theaters. And they just got to run, a couple servers, well, probably a couple hundred servers, and they get to keep the lion's share. Whereas I think usually if they go to a theater, they keep like half of it. So this is the last movie in the 5 Daniel Craig James Bond movies. And spoiler, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Yes, James Bond does die. Definitively. Although, honestly, when I listened to the videos, people were like, he gets bombed the shit out. He's totally 100% dead. I'm like, bro, you saw him and then you saw like an explosion in the foreground. Like, if Daniel Craig decided, he's like, I really, really want to do it, like, he could come back. He totally could. I didn't realize it was going to go to streaming this quickly. I thought it was not going to go to streaming until like December. So I've been stalling because I don't want to see movies in theaters. So I rewatched the first 4 Daniel Craig movies. And then I watched the last 3 of the 4 Pierce Brosnan movies. Having watched this movie a day after watching the horrifically bad, Die Another Day, probably made it seem a little bit better than it was. But I've heard consistently across the board good reviews. So the main thing I want to say about this movie, having watched a bunch of Bond movies over the last month or so, is that Bond movies have a huge problem with tone and quality. I'm not just talking about from movie to movie. I'm talking about within the same movie. Since the Bond has so much legacy and tropes that are expected to include, you'll have a good scene followed by a terrible scene, followed by an okay scene, followed by a freaking masterpiece scene. And that's even like the good movies, like Skyfall. And then you have other movies like Spectre and Die Another Day, where the first hour is quite good. And then it just completely loses the plot, turns into dog shit in the second hour. There also seems to be a weird thing in James Bond movies where they will introduce the villain and the love interest like an hour into the movie. Speaking of increments of time, I was completely shocked when I saw that this movie was 2 hours and 45 minutes. It usually takes me forever to watch a movie at home, but I knocked this out in a single evening. A couple of breaks for snacks, and that was it. I would knock out, long passages at the same time. So what I want to say about this movie, why it's so good, although I still think Skyfall is better, the first hour and a half of Casino Royale is better. And even like there's other Bond movies like Tomorrow Never Dies is really, really good. I would say Tomorrow Never Dies is better than No Time to Die. But No Time to Die is an excellent way to end this era. So let's talk about the elephant in the room, which is the black female 007. This made the rounds in both the show media and the reaction YouTube channels, and it was a mess. And we didn't imagine this. They did many interviews where they said this is Bond for the Me Too era. The director stated that the Sean Connery James Bond was essentially a rapist, and the marketing does not match this film at all. It's a really good movie. It actually fixes a lot of the problems with Spectre. Characters that didn't work or you just didn't understand like why they were so important. Like Bond's love interest was like nothing in Spectre. You didn't even understand why he was talking to her. Their relationship actually makes sense and they have a connection in this one. Blofeld was a complete joke in Spectre, and he actually works here in his very limited capacity. I went to the trivia section of the IMDb page, and it is the most tiresome trivia section I've ever seen. It's literally like, this is the 5th Bond movie where there's a seaplane. This is the 3rd movie in the Daniel Craig Bond movies where he rides a motorcycle. It's like, oh God, this is not interesting. But there's one thing where they're saying like Blofeld being in this movie was like a secret. Is like, you're probably trying to not lose people because Spectre was awful. I remember when Spectre came out, Daniel Craig was saying like, I don't ever want to make a James Bond movie. I hated this. And I think he just hated making Spectre because it was so bad. Also, I think it was because that was the end of his initial contract. And so he was trying to negotiate. It's like, hey, I need a lot of money to come back. He is early 50s. He's in good shape still, actually quite good shape. For some, you know, there's only so much you can do to stop aging. Yeah, his face is a little, the skin is a little saggier, but he's still in good muscular shape. He's good in the action scenes. He seems to be having more fun than he has since Casino Royale. That's the other thing that's very, very surprising about this movie. It's fun. It's not silly, but we get several sequences of Bond in his prime. You saw the trailers. The trailers, at least plot-wise, don't lie. You know, Bond is in retirement. He's brought back to work for the CIA, and then he ends up meeting his ex. And so there's a whole scene with Leiter and, what was her name? Paloma? Anna de Armas plays this a new agent. I believe she's a CIA agent. Absolutely fantastic. It's funny, I was watching The Awful Die Another Day, and at the time they're talking about, oh, we're going to spin Halle Berry's character Jinx into her own franchise. What the hell? Like, the character was nothing, and Halle can't act. And then supposedly they did the same thing with Wei Lin, Michelle Yeoh's character in Tomorrow Never Dies. Anna de Armas, I totally want to see a movie with her character. You've never seen a spy character like this. Like, she's like fun and quirky. It's funny, several reviewers were saying, like, they said, we can totally tell the scenes that Phoebe Waller-Bridge wrote. And I thought there were going to be very abrupt changes in style. They weren't, but now looking back at it, I'm like, yeah, probably the Paloma scenes that's where Phoebe Waller-Bridge did her magic. Hopefully, her writing contribution was not Safin's backstory and motivation, because that was terrible. So they have Rami Malek as the villain Safin, and I don't know. I mean, he's a good actor. He's got a very captivating face, but like he's just a generic bland Bond villain. It's funny. The French guy from frickin' Quantum of Solace was a better villain than Rami Malek, and it's that thing. If it's not on the page, it's not on the stage. The writing was just not there for his character. By the way, there's this weird thing where these two writers have contributed in some way, shape, or form to every Bond movie since The World Is Not Enough in 1999. That's crazy to me. Now, sometimes they write the plot, or sometimes they come in at the end and they just do a polish. I thought that was interesting. It was really fun to see some, there's literally like Bond having fun. He's almost kind of like dancing through some of the gunfights. He's great with Anna de Armas. I totally want to see her again. Okay, so I said we were going to talk about Nomi, and then I talked about other things. Okay, Nomi. They made this huge deal where the first trailer was her talking shit and putting Bond down, and then the actress was running their mouth and other people on the thing. She actually has a very interesting character, and I think, again, this might be Phoebe Waller-Bridge in that she's insecure. She's taken over the mantle of 007 with a huge legacy from the previous 007, and she's insecure and she's trying to pump herself up. And then we see her in action sequences, and James Bond, who is 007 at the end, but most of it he's just, former 00. He's better than her. Why? Because it's his movie. That is a classic thing to do. And then you get to see her insecurity in the way that she has to kind of like throw threats around, but she kind of realizes, she's not as good. He's the original 007. So that was very nice and kind of shocking. They do some interesting things with the Ralph Fiennes M. I really miss Dame Judi Dench, but she's probably like 80 right now, where he's making some mistakes, but it's not the classic. It's like, oh, the government's evil. Like you can see on his face, he's like, I was legitimately trying to save lives with this program. They have this designer gene poison. They had an official term, I'm blanking on it. And it's funny, people were saying like, this is way too sci-fi. It's like, bruh, I just watched Tomorrow Never Dies, where there was a guy who had a new face, changed his race, and he wore a Nintendo Power Glove. Like, this is relatively believable that you could have DNA-specific poison where you can say, we're just going to kill this one person, or you can say, we're going to kill everyone of this race or this family. And they do a lot of interesting things with this. Although there's some stuff I'm going to have to pay attention on the second. At some point, they were like, oh, you've been poisoned. I'm like, he just poisoned because he's in this, like, water? The water poisoned him? But how does the water know to connect him with the other people in this DNA genealogy? Okay, I don't really understand that part. But it works. But my favorite thing is the consistency of tone and quality. Talking about Spectre, which they had this scene where at one point Bond like lands a plane and the wings shear off, and then he's racing a plane down a ski slope against cars. And I'm like, this is a Roger Moore James Bond scene. It fits with Roger Moore. I think it's even too silly for like Pierce Brosnan. And then it's sitting here in a Daniel Craig James Bond movie. It doesn't fit. Everything fit here. There's some action sequences where they're not exactly Bond-like, but at one point, like this CIA double agent is killed just by a car being tipped over. But it fits, and it's kind of over the top, but it also fits in like the more realistic world. I want to say just the gunplay and the weapons handling to me was pretty darn good. At some point, you're like, how is Bond taking out literally dozens of enemy soldiers? Well, he's more experienced and he's acting smart, and he gets a little bit lucky every now and then. Fantastic stunt work, specifically with motorcycles in one of the early scenes. You've seen it in the trailer where he's going up those stairs and he jumps over that wall. Supposedly, I looked it up, that's like a real stunt. Like that's not wire, it's not CGI. It just looks fantastic. It's fun seeing Bond relaxed. I always joke that Bond's idea of like a good life is like the same as your mom. Like he wants to go to like Tuscany. Like he wants to go on a sailboat. I did like that when he first meets Nomi, he thinks he's just going to hook up. And even though he's 50, she's like, oh, is that the bedroom? He's like, all right, giddy up. And I was like, okay, I thought we were going to get this dour, depressed Bond. And no, it's not like that. Like I said, there's a lot of just fun action scenes. There's a little bit of humor. It does work. Madeline Swan, she becomes a good character in this. The whole thing with his relationship works. Ending things with Blofeld works. There's just a lot of, it's just good. That being said, as good as it was, Skyfall was much better. There's parts of Quantum of Solace that are better than parts of this movie, but it all works. It's a nice goodbye. I was thinking about Endgame, where Tony Stark dies and he's like early, mid-50s. Same thing with Bond here. And it's like, it feels like that's a good age for an action hero to die. You've had a long enough life, you really contributed, and they have a nice thing at the end where Ralph Fiennes M is reading, is it poetry or is it the Bible? And it basically says, life is not to just exist, it's to live and it's to use your time. And you're like, yeah, Bond definitely, did a lot with his, 53 years of life. So there is, I mean, it's not woke, but it's kind of like accumulated woke. At one point, they're showing, what is it, MI6? And it's two white straight guys, a gay white guy, and two black women. I was like, yeah, that's the UK. It's like 40% black, 20% gay. It's fine. Moneypenny, she's really not in it that much. I really like her. She was fantastic in Skyfall. I don't remember her doing much in Spectre. They bring her back, but she doesn't really do much in this. But the actress is fantastic. I just saw her in Ninja Assassin, so I've got kind of a crush on her. But overall, it was quite good. As a farewell to this version of Bond, I thought it worked. It was more fun than I thought. The action was really good. The sci-fi elements to me were nothing unbelievable. There is a bit where, one 53-year-old guy killing I think he kills 75 enemy soldiers in the finale. But he uses CQB tactics that are believable. Weapons handling is good. Although at one point he gets shot, and there's no blood, and I was confused. I was like, did he get shot or not? Now in real life, when people get shot, they don't geyser blood. Having been to war, I know that when people get shot, you actually have to look for the wound. I read descriptions and people said he got shot, and I was like, if I wouldn't have read the wiki or reviews where people talked about him getting shot, I would have assumed that they missed or they hit some sort of super thin body armor underneath his clothing that they don't really show. Because Safin gets shot at one point and there's no blood, and then I guess you're just supposed to go, oh, he's got a coat, there's probably body armor. Now, James Bond at the end, he's basically just in like a jersey type of thing. And so there's really no room for body armor underneath it. But I mean, you could say it was like John Wick, where it was like a bulletproof, cloth or something like that. But because it doesn't really need for him to be shot, because at the end, the reason he stays on the island is not because he's dying, but because he can't be around his family. So he's basically like, this is a good time to check out. So he voluntarily stays on the island. Although technically he could have stayed there so that the guards didn't close these blast doors that needed to be open for the incoming missiles to have maximum effect on target. I really liked it. I really was happy about it. I'm shocked that it's almost 3 hours. I rented it for $19.99 for I think 24 hours. I'm totally happy with the price I paid. I'm gonna try to watch it again one more time. Ana de Armas, I totally want to see her in a spinoff. Yeah, definitely. At least one. They always try to give these spin-off characters entire franchises. I don't think this character is rich enough for its own franchise. But one movie, absolutely. And if you want to guest star Nomi, I'm totally fine with that. I would absolutely see that. So anyways, definitely recommend. I think you're going to like it. If you like the other Daniel Craig movies, it fixes a lot of problems from the previous ones. It has some really great moments. It's kind of toned down. There's this really gauzy cinematography to it. Oh, speaking of which, there's a scene in Cuba where I felt like the shots didn't match. I'm talking about the cinematography, the palette they used. And I was like, maybe it's because I'm watching on my TV. If you really know about cinematography and color correction, can you tell me if there was some shots, from shot to shot, they didn't feel like they were processed in the same way? That's just a little curiosity. Anyways, definitely recommend, so go check it out.